The truth is that it really irks me when people actually lose out on the tons of knowledge that they can take away from a 2-hour interview because they're so focused on the small things, on gossip and other unrelated issues that don't actually help us as individuals to grow. The focus now on Twitter is that snippet that is taken from a 2-hour interview that's filled with gems and knowledge and information and education that can actually make us better. Instead, the focus is on 𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 and Vusi's response to the relationship and why he feels that they can't fix things. So I'm here to give you a different perspective, to give you more so a growth perspective, a perspective where we look at, not necessarily dissect some of the topics that they discussed, but look at them and see what we can seemingly take away that can make us better at the end of the day. First and foremost, kudos to Penuel for finally bringing Vusi to the Penuel Show, and kudos to him more so for keeping him there for a good 2 hours and 10 minutes, where we could just indulge, take away, learn, and actually grow from the conversation. Firstly, they addressed how each of them see each other, particularly the past experiences, and how even though Penuel has dissed Vusi in the past based on how he speaks.
I remember you posted it and you were laughing. And I was like, Vusi Thembekwayo speaks like this.
They actually then took down the history element of why he speaks the way he speaks. He was trained to speak that way.
You don't wake up talking like this.
Yeah.
I was trained to. This is why I'm the highest paid speaker in the continent.
He has more so a global outlook and a global output. So he has trained himself to speak that way. He was trained as a public speaker to speak that way. So he doesn't have any insecurities based on how people see him, based on the opinions that people have of him, just because he speaks a particular way. Instead, it's about the substance that comes out of his mouth every time he speaks. He actually shares with us and narrates the amount of experience that he has garnered since he was 15 years old.
What do? I'm a global speaker. What does that mean? That means in a week from now, I'll be in Tokyo. A week after that, in Kuala Lumpur. A week after that, in Brazil.
Since he has been on a global stage from the age of 17, since he has been on a platform where he can influence not only how people think, but how people actually have a different perspective of the world and how people actually see the world. They also look at issues of intelligence, defining intelligence in their own ways and interrogating whether Vusi is or thinks of himself to be the most intelligent person in the African continent, which he boldly and honestly says that he isn't, because of the amount of people he's met throughout his journey, the amount of people that have influenced him to think in a particular way, and the amount of people that have led him to experience certain things and see things in a particular way.
No, I think that's a statement of fact.
Okay.
Don't misunderstand me. I think I'm in the top 1% of the smartest people in the continent.
It's a lot of people.
So they dissect the issue of intelligence, what it means, and I like the way Vusi actually explains how he sees intelligence. It's about being able to have an elastic mind.
And here's my definition of intelligence. My definition of intelligence is how elastic your mind is. Intelligence is not a number. It's a function of elasticity.
But how do you measure that?
And that's where I'm going.
Being able to have a mind that expands when it is exposed to new things, but more so expands and adapts.
You determine Penuel's intelligence by his ability to interrogate new data using new frameworks and to arrive at new outcomes without getting stuck in the past. That's intelligence. That's how we as human beings have adapted.
So he takes the historical outlook of why it is said that humans are the most important species in the globe or in the world and throughout history. It's not only based on their intelligence, but the fact that you can't divorce their intelligence to the ability of adapting. So you can't, but more so to the fact that you can't divorce their intelligence to adaptability, being able to adapt, having an elastic mind, being able to read a current situation, adapt in that situation, being put in a new environment and being able to come out of that particular new environment a better person or an adept person. A person who can fit in with the rest of society, and after fitting in, move on to the next level of human society and human consciousness and become better. They also address issues around spirituality.
I'm a believer, Penuel, and every time in my life I have argued with God, I've lost.
Right? Vusi shares how he is guided by his God. He is guided by his belief system. He is guided by the way and the direction in which the universe points him. So even though people want him to actually get involved in the politics games, he actually says that he is not sure whether he is or will not get into politics. Instead, he will be directed by his God. He will always follow that voice that tells him whether to do something or not to do something, because in his heart of hearts, he knows that every time he's had a battle with the Lord, he's lost. So unlike the story that we've heard of Jacob actually wrestling with the Lord overnight, he's had his own wrestling time with the Lord, and every time he has lost that battle. So his decision whether or not to get into power dynamics, into politics, into using his influence to garner votes and make decisions that will benefit his country, that decision, he says, doesn't lie only with him. You see what I'm saying, guys? It goes beyond just the gossip. There's just so much, so many layers that you can take out of a 2-hour, 10-minute conversation. Some of the other things that they address include issues around history, the history of words, the meaning of words, how history actually influences how we think right now, and how we are following archaic ways of living and systems that led us to think in a particular way, because we aren't interested in what history has to offer in the lessons, and we aren't interested in being that intelligent species, that human species that adapts to changes, because we are using archaic and old rules, old ways of living, old ways of thinking, old ways of influencing people. And that's why even the historical giants, whether good or bad, still influence how he has mastered his craft of public speaking, of business and the like.
Every person watching this loves to think, myself and you included,
Sure.
that with a smart, yes, we have the ability for that, and certainly the capability to exist at that level. But when the SHIT hits the proverbial, all of us default to that primal, all of us.
He uses individuals such as Adolf Hitler, as his example of saying, I've studied this craft, and people actually don't know or understand the depth at which public speaking actually goes. He has studied the cadences, the nuances, people's ability to speak to large crowds, to small crowds, to relay a message. He uses an example of Hitler in terms of the rhythm in which Hitler actually speaks, and obviously speaks indirectly about Julius Malema, and says that Julius Malema, who has been where he is and is where he is today, is because of that ability of using a particular style of speaking to interject himself into the hearts of the people that are listening, so that his message penetrates their ears and goes down to those very hearts.
Have you left us? You know, when I first spoke to you last year, you were telling me you're in another country. You're like, look, I spend a lot of my time here. I'm like, but don't leave us behind.
They also touch on issues of selling out.
Bafu, I've tried. I won't lie to you. This country has pained me more than I could tell you. It's brought me to the brink of tears, my country.
Doesn't appreciate you.
And not
especially
just-
the people that you're trying to inspire, motivate, and maybe hustle for.
And that's the part for me that confuses me.
Explaining that selling out goes beyond just how you speak. Selling out goes to issues of how you dress. Selling out goes to issues of how you behave. selling out goes to also our primitive nature in terms of our ethnicity. We choose to follow certain customs and we choose to avoid certain customs. They address the importance of looking and having an outlook that goes beyond just one's appearance. How deep do you go in terms of claiming that you are an African? How accepting are you of your African brothers? How do you look to society to better society? How do you influence your community so that even though you may come from different backgrounds, you yourself come out better? They go on to discuss how in South Africa, you look at the individuals, men and women and everybody else. You compare them to our African brothers and sisters and our counterparts, and you'll find that in many departments, we come out short. In many departments, we fail to come out better because many African countries, with the case study being Zimbabwe, have an education level, a proficiency level that's much higher than us in South Africa. They have an ability to live under dire and difficult situations, and that thus gives them a mental fortitude and a mental strength, a physical fortitude and a physical strength, a demeanor and an approach to things that outweighs our ability as the South African people. We are much more focused on other things because of the colloquial systems that were built, the structures that were built, the buildings that were built before us as African Black people can actually become better. So they look at that difference and highlight all the things that we can then learn from our African brothers and sisters in the process.
Mina ngingena ngokuyikuza.
Sure.
Yabona, I do my work. Bese once in a while bese ngiyabuya ngihlala phansi futhi ngibukele.
Sure.
And disappear for a year or two. Bese once in a while ngibuye futhi ngithela into. You are in it every day. I don't know mentally what it does to you because I know mentally what it does to me.
Fair. It's a dangerous space, and it was going to be one of my questions around how you engage average minds that absolutely refuse to even begin challenging their minds for bigger things.
They also look at issues of mental health. If you look at Penuel and Vusi Thembekwayo, they have many similarities. And one of the key similarities that exist is that they challenge the system a lot. That's one of the things that makes them quite similar to each other. They challenge the system a lot. And in challenging the system, they highlight that your mental health takes a hit. They highlight how dangerous it is to actually be on the other side, to show that you are quite strong in your convictions, quite strong in your belief systems. And unfortunately, those belief systems, as long as they go against the grain and they go against the masses, it means that there's a lot of defending that you will then have to do before you build your clan and your people. And in so doing, Vusi highlights the amount of pain that he has endured from all the negativity that has come to him. He says openly how much he has been pained by South Africa. He says that throughout the years, when you progress, you know, let's say, for example, you are coming from Kokasi, a particular neighborhood, and then you grow to elevate yourself insofar as society's standards. Then you are likely to leave that neighborhood and not be viewed the same by those very people. For him, he looks at it on a higher scale, from a global scale, in a country level. When he left and rose to increase his influence, his name, his business prosperity, and everything else, his technical proficiency in his craft outside of South Africa, somehow it's as if us as South Africans, in losing him, we were hurt and ended up hurting him in the process. So it doesn't matter what he says in this day and age, it doesn't matter what he does in this day and age, unfortunately there will be that element of us looking at him in a way that actually pains him. And that's why some of the things that he says are taken out of context, or at least that's how he feels. That some of the things that he says are taken out of context, and in taking them out of context, you don't benefit him in any way. And so Penuel asks him that simple question of saying, have we lost him to the rest of the world? Because obviously he's doing business all across the world. He's doing business all across the globe. So have we lost him in the process? Has he now focused on growing outside of South Africa, and they make the Aussie jokes, you know, eh? They make all those Aussie jokes around whether he's going to be part of those that actually leave the country and stay permanently outside of South Africa, of which on a different platform, I once heard him say that he was planning on moving. So I'm glad that it hasn't happened as yet, because of all the impact that I feel he still needs to have to benefit us in the process of his growth. We don't want to feel neglected, and we don't want to be left behind. They also discuss, of course, I didn't know this because I have his book, The Magna Carta of Exponentiality. I haven't read it because on my other channel, I also review books. So this has actually inspired me to go and read the book. He has actually signed my book. I have 2 of his books, Vusi and The Magna Carta of Exponentiality. So he has signed both books. I've read the Vusi book, but because I've consumed his content for so many years, I felt like I already knew 70% of everything that was in that Vusi book. So now I'm intrigued and excited to actually go and read the Magna Carta of Exponentiality, right? So they discuss, and he discusses why he came up with that title. It actually tells us the history in England, how it came about in terms of how some of the laws came about, why all men are said to be created equal, why we all need to be presumed innocent until found guilty, and a magnitude or a plethora of other laws and rules that actually guide society today. And so he says, don't just focus on the cover, actually open the book and read it. So I'm actually interested. One thing I know about that book before I even read it is that there is going to be an example around the barbarians at the gate, because there are some keynote speeches that he did years back that focus on that particular subject. So I do think I've heard someone discuss the book before and highlight that that is within that book. So I'm excited for that, right? Over and above all the other topics that they actually discussed, I won't go deep into it. I see the video already as it is actually becoming longer and longer. So maybe let me highlight this particular point that I also took away from their conversation. South Africa is behind. Guys, South Africa is behind. They make many examples around why they feel South Africa is behind, and it doesn't deserve to be behind. But the truth is, it is. It is, and that's where they discuss issues around our minds, average minds versus superior minds, and how the basic of minds can actually take us forward. At the depth of it all and at the end of it all, we are all intelligent insofar as our primitive nature. At the end of it, we are all animals. So to elevate from those type of animals as individuals, as community members, and as leaders, we need to read, we need to learn, and we need to take the best out of conversations such as those taken or heard from Penuel and Vusi Thembekwayo. And we need to empower ourselves, uplift ourselves, employ ourselves, and build together. So I'm grateful for you listening to this video. There are many others that I'm going to review on this particular channel. So if you have any podcasts and broadcasts that you are interested in, and you'd like my output and opinion and a quick review or summation, summary, or synopsis of it, then do hit me up in the comments, and I'll definitely look at them, watch them, listen, and give my views and opinions around them. I love you guys. Cheers. See you on the next one. 𝐿𝐿.
But this chat had to happen, and I'm looking forward to more. Thank you so much for coming through.
Before I go, shout out to you for doing this, man. Like, you hold a front line of a certain level of interrogation which is necessary in South Africa, and unfortunately for you, you occupy a space where you are a friend to none.
Yeah,
you would have to for you to be a critical thinker. And you know, all I pray upon you is that you just remain true to that, because you were called to do it, and I think you're a very necessary voice. So, and thanks for being patient. You know, I know this took forever.